There's a small candy servant who has been standing in the background of Adventure Time since the very first episode. He sets tables, he draws bats, he attends to Princess Bubblegum with a politeness so disarming you'd never think twice about him. And that's exactly the point. Because Peppermint Butler isn't a servant who happens to know dark magic. He's something much, much older than that. Something the show barely lets itself admit out loud. And once you see it, once you actually start looking at what he does and who reacts to him and what he knows, you can't unsee it. Let's start at the beginning, or what looks like the beginning. Peppermint Butler first appears in Slumber Party Panic, Season 1, Episode 1. He's handing out juice. That's it. That's the scene. Blink and you miss him. The show gives you absolutely nothing to work with, and that's intentional, because everything Peppermint Butler is gets revealed sideways, never straight at you, always at an angle, always just past the frame. The first real crack appears in Death in Bloom, and this is the episode that should have made everyone stop and ask questions. Finn and Jake accidentally kill Princess Bubblegum's beloved plant, and they travel to the land of the dead to retrieve its soul before she notices. Standard Adventure Time chaos. But before they go, Peppermint Butler stops them. And here's what he says. Death is a friend of mine. Tell him Peppermint Butler says hello. And then he just goes back to folding napkins. Jake barely reacts. Finn files it away. The episode moves on. But think about what just happened. A candy butler who exists in a world where the land of the dead is a real visitable place just told two teenagers that he is personally acquainted with the literal embodiment of death. Not that he's heard of him, not that he read about him, he knows him. They're friends. And the show treats it like a throwaway gag. It is not a throwaway gag. When Finn and Jake actually reach the land of the dead and meet Death himself, this ancient, cosmic, intimidating figure who plays people's lives away in music battles, Death's immediate reaction to hearing Peppermint Butler's name is relief. He's relieved. He gives them what they came for without a fight, because Peppermint Butler vouched for them. That is not something a servant earns. That's not something you get by butling really, really well. Whatever Peppermint Butler's relationship with Death is, it's old and it's significant, and Death respects it, maybe even fears it a little. Now layer this with what comes next. In From Bad to Worse, there's a zombie outbreak in the Candy Kingdom. Bubblegum gets infected, the whole castle descends into chaos, and Peppermint Butler, the soft-spoken little mint who draws the princess's baths, starts drawing a containment circle on the floor with complete precision. He knows the geometry, he knows the symbols, he knows the ritual. He performs it from memory, without notes, without hesitation, because this isn't new information to him. This is vocabulary, a language he's been fluent in for a long time. Here's the question the show never quite asks directly. Where did he learn any of this? Bubblegum is a scientist. Her power comes from chemistry and logic and centuries of obsessive study. Marceline inherited her power through bloodline and lived through 1,000 years of fighting to understand it. Even the Lich has a clearly defined origin, but Peppermint Butler? Nobody explains it. Nobody in the show asks. He's just like this. He has always just been like this. And the show's refusal to explain him is, I think, the most interesting thing about him. Because here's what the show does explain eventually, and it's buried in a place most people rush past. In the Stakes miniseries, Peppermint Butler is confirmed to practice the dark arts. Not dabble, not experiment with out of curiosity. Practice, as in this is a consistent part of who he is and how he operates. There's a scene where he's matter-of-factly preparing something involving dark energy while everything else around him is falling apart, and he is just calm, methodical, focused. That calm is really important. Every character in Adventure Time who deals with dangerous power struggles with it in some visible way. Finn struggles with rage and grief. Bubblegum's control turns into obsession. Marceline spent centuries running from her own nature. Even the Ice King, at his most pitiable, is defined by how thoroughly the power he holds has destroyed him. Power costs something in this universe. It always costs something. Peppermint Butler doesn't seem to pay. He operates dark magic the way a carpenter operates a saw. It's a tool, it's familiar, it doesn't disturb him. And that comfort with power that unsettles everyone else around him is what makes him genuinely strange, genuinely interesting. Now, the Candy Kingdom itself runs on a kind of curated innocence. Princess Bubblegum built it that way, partly out of genuine care, partly out of control. The citizens are kept happy, kept just informed enough to function, and no further. It's benevolent, absolutely, but it's also a lid on something, a maintained surface. Peppermint Butler lives underneath that surface. He serves Bubblegum faithfully, nobody questions that loyalty, but he also maintains a whole other dimension of knowledge and connection that exists completely outside her jurisdiction. He knows death personally. He practices magic that runs on forces Bubblegum science can't fully categorize. He has a reputation, and this is the part that gets me, a reputation that precedes him in the darkest parts of the world. In Nemesis, we find out that Peacemaster, a wizard who hunts dark magic practitioners, considers Peppermint Butler a genuine threat. Not a nuisance, a threat. He categorizes him alongside entities that have to be neutralized. This small candy butler who tucks in royalty at night is on a serious dark arts hunter's actual target list. Without breaking much of a sweat, he turns Peacemaster's children into a grotesque little monster thing and uses that as leverage. It's played with dark comedy, but what you're actually watching is someone who knows exactly how to break people, exactly where to apply pressure, exactly what the consequences will be, and how to deploy them. That's not instinct, that's experience. So what is he really? Adventure Time is a post-apocalyptic world. Ooh sits on top of the ruins of human civilization, built up over 1,000 years since the Mushroom War. In that time, magic re-entered the world, new species evolved, old things woke up. The rules changed completely, and in that chaos, certain figures accumulated power just by surviving long enough to learn things nobody else would bother learning. Peppermint Butler is almost certainly one of those figures. He doesn't age the way biological creatures do. He's candy. He was made, presumably, by Bubblegum at some point, or by the Candy Kingdom's early formation. But the show never pins down when exactly, and the knowledge he carries doesn't feel like something you'd accumulate in a single lifetime. The relationship with death alone suggests decades of careful cultivation. The fluency in dark ritual suggests study that started well before anyone currently around him would remember. He knows the shape of things most people in Ooh pretend don't exist, and he keeps that knowledge quiet and close and useful. There's a version of Peppermint Butler that's being read by some fans as secretly sinister, an agent of something darker hiding inside the Candy Kingdom. And I understand why, the evidence can look like that, but I don't think that's it. What Peppermint Butler actually seems to be is something rarer than a villain. He's a pragmatist. He serves Bubblegum genuinely, completely, with real loyalty. And he also maintains a whole world of knowledge and relationship that exists alongside that service because he understands something the show spends years making Bubblegum herself slowly learn. The universe is not clean. It doesn't divide neatly into science and chaos. They always have, and someone has to know how to navigate the overlap. Someone has to be fluent in the darker grammar of the world, because pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make it stop existing. It just leaves you unprepared when it shows up. Peppermint Butler is always prepared. In Fiona and Cake's second season, Peppermint Butler gets more space than he's ever had before, and what the show does with that space is quietly devastating. He's running the Candy Kingdom in Bubblegum's absence, and you watch him do it with exactly the same precision he applies to everything else. He makes difficult decisions without flinching, and at no point does he seem to be waiting for someone else to take over. He's simply handling it. But there's a moment, quieter than you'd expect, where something breaks through the composure slightly. Just slightly. A flicker of something that looks almost like loneliness. Like someone who has been the most capable person in every room for so long that the capability itself has become its own kind of isolation. Because if you're always the one who knows the thing nobody else knows, who handles the thing nobody else can handle,
who smiles pleasantly through knowledge that would unhinge most people, when does anyone actually see you? That's the real story buried inside Peppermint Butler's whole deal. Not the dark magic, not the death friendship, not the Peacemaster confrontation, though all of that is genuinely fascinating. The real thing is that this character has built a life at the intersection of the world people want to live in and the world that actually exists. He maintains both simultaneously. He makes the comfortable surface possible, in part, by being willing to go underneath it. And he does all of this without ever being thanked for the part that actually matters. Because nobody knows about the part that actually matters. Finn saves the world loudly. Bubblegum rebuilds it carefully. Marceline survived it. Jake accepted it. Peppermint Butler just keeps it running, quietly, from the background, while knowing things that would make everyone around him deeply uncomfortable if they really sat with it. There's a lesson in him that I keep coming back to. We talk a lot about the characters who grow into their power, who earn it through suffering or sacrifice or long arcs of emotional maturation. And Adventure Time is full of those characters, and they're wonderful and they matter. But Peppermint Butler is the other kind of person, the one who already arrived, who has already done the work, lived through the dark, come out the other side with knowledge and capability, and a kind of settled peace with what the world actually is. He doesn't need to learn the lesson the show is teaching. He already knows it. He's known it for a while. And he still shows up every morning, still draws the bath, still sets the table, still takes the occasional dark magic contract or cosmic entity conversation in stride, then goes back to his duties without making a thing of it. Leave a like if this one hit different. Subscribe if you're new, because this is the kind of deep dive you'll find here regularly. I'll catch you in the next one.